Our next reader up is David Sterrit, who he's a film critic, author, and scholar. He's notable for his work on Alfred Hitchcock and Jean-Luc Godard. Jean-Luc Godard?
Jean-Luc.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, his writings on film and film culture appear regularly in various publications, including the New York Times, Movie Maker Magazine, the Huffington Post, Senses of Cinema, Cineast, Film Comment, Film Quarterly. He has several books out: Guiltless Pleasures, a David Sterrit film reader, Mad to be Saved, The Beats, 50s, and Fiction, The Honeymooners, recently The Films of Alfred Hitchcock, and now his latest book, which is about Spike Lee, called Spike Lee's America, and he's going to be reading a little bit from that. Thanks a lot, David.
Thank you. I want to thank very much John and Deborah for inviting me, and not thank them for giving me such impossible acts to follow. But we'll do what we can. This book, Spike Lee's America, is called that because it was written for a series published by Polity Press in London, which is called America Through the Lens. And each book is about a filmmaker, the vision of America constructed in the films of a particular filmmaker. There's a book on Martin Scorsese, there's a book on Steven Spielberg, there's a book on Alfred Hitchcock, and there is a book on Spike Lee, and I imagine plenty more to come. So I was gonna read something about Spike's best known movie, which is Do the Right Thing. And then I thought, no, I'd rather read just a bit about a movie which is, I think, equally great. I think that is one of his two masterpieces. The other one is 25th Hour. Equally great, but not nearly as well known. So I'm hoping maybe to do a little missionary work here and kind of spread the gospel a bit. So I'll just read a bit about that. David Benioff published his first novel, The 25th Hour, in 2000. He wrote the screenplay for Lee's movie soon afterwards, staying true to the outlines of the original story. It centers on Monty Brogan, played by Edward Norton, a young New Yorker spending his last night with friends and family before starting a 7-year prison stretch for drug dealing. He's due to surrender himself at the medium security Otisville prison in upstate New York, about 70 miles from New York City, the next morning. Monty's closest male friends are Frank Slordy, a Wall Street stockbroker, and Jake Alinsky, a prep school English teacher who has developed a crush on Mary D'Annunzio, a flirtatious pupil in his poetry class. Those characters are played by Barry Pepper, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Anna Paquin. Monty's girlfriend, Naturel Rivera, played by Rosario Dawson, is a Latina with Puerto Rican roots. His mother died when he was 11, but his Irish-American father, James Brogan, played by the great Brian Cox, is a former fireman and a reformed alcoholic who still runs a neighborhood bar in Queens, and his uncle Nikolai is a Russian gangster whose drugs Monty peddled until the narcs barged into his apartment and went straight to the stash of dope and cash hidden in the living room sofa. Nikolai's enforcer, a Ukrainian thug named Kosta Novotny, also figures in the story. Major scenes include a farewell bash at a nightclub, a tense meeting upstairs between Monty and his Russian mafia cronies, and a fight in which Frank beats Monty up after Monty implores him to mess up his face so he'll stand a chance of not being raped the moment he walks through the prison door. We learn about Monty's history and relationships through encounters, conversations, and flashbacks. We also gain insights into his fierce regrets over his wasted past and his gnawing anxiety about what may be a horrific future. Although the novel was in print a year before September 11, 2001, the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon were very much on Lee's mind when he and Benioff went to work on the shooting script. As Lee said later, he felt that as responsible filmmakers, they were obligated to mirror the post-9/11 atmosphere in the film. This brought about various adjustments to the original material. Frank's apartment directly overlooks the Ground Zero site. James became a retired firefighter as well as the owner of a bar, and the bar houses a shrine of photographs memorializing firefighters killed in the World Trade Center attack. Phrases like Bin Laden, wanted dead or alive, appear on t-shirts, reflecting Lee's observation that in the wake of the tragedy, Americans wanted blood. Terence Blanchard's score was also affected. Recorded by an orchestra with such unusual elements as Northumbrian small pipes and vocalizing by the French-Algerian singer Cheb Mami, it incorporates melodies and textures borrowed from Middle Eastern and Irish musical traditions. As Blanchard explained, all too often Islamic music and Irish music have been associated with just certain sections of American life, and I guess Spike was trying to say all of this is America. Blanchard's score makes its first appearance during the opening credits, which are visually accompanied by majestic and melancholy views of the two near-vertical shafts of light that memorialized 9/11 in its immediate aftermath. The gravity of the film's intentions is unmistakable from the outset, and the story begins with a scene, later seen to be a flashback, that introduces serious emotion through everyday activity that's just a little out of the ordinary. Monty and Kostya are driving to some sort of drug appointment when they spot a dog that has been severely wounded, probably in a dogfight. Kostya's gun is handy, and Monty wants to put the dog out of its misery. Badly injured though it is, the dog tries to fight him off, instantly winning the affections of Monty, who has an outlaw streak of his own hidden beneath a seemingly harmless demeanor. Naming him Doyle in honor of his Irish ancestry, Monty adopts him as a pet, and once he's rehabilitated, they become close companions. This single brief scene sets out several key elements of the film. The blend of decency and rebelliousness in Monty's personality, the fascination with dark sides of New York, such as the physical place where Monty finds the dog, and the mental space he inhabits as a dope dealer, and Monty's need for loyalty, which he immediately shows to Doyle and receives from Doyle in return. Loyalty is a key theme of 25th Hour, since a major subplot arises from the suspicion of Monty's friends that his lover Naturel is the person who betrayed him to the police. Although a more likely malefactor ultimately proves to have been the traitor, the misgivings about Naturel are plausible, since the cops clearly knew just what they were seeking and where it was concealed in the apartment that she and Monty shared. Then, too, Monty's main reason for entering the drug trade was to raise the payoff money that keeps James's bar safe from mob extortionists. Talking with his dad later in the film, Monty says that the only people he has confidence in besides his father are Jake and Frank, his longtime friends. Trust and betrayal, friendship and loneliness, longing and dread, the vibrancy of urban America, and the horror of September 11 do subtle, insinuating dances with one another throughout the film. The story of Monty and the theme of 9/11 are most fully integrated during two indelible scenes. In one of them, Monty by the way, I have to warn you, this being a David Sterrit joint about a Spike Lee joint, it may contain offensive language. Okay. In one of these two scenes I want to focus on, Monty stands before a restroom mirror and reflects on all the people he might blame for the rotten turn his life has taken. This episode has been controversial because of its similarity to a scene in Do the Right Thing, the so-called race rant, where the story stops in its tracks while characters holler race-baiting slurs, smears, insults, and epithets directly into the camera, foregrounding the banality, inanity, and sheer emptiness of the abusive language that lies coiled within ordinary discourse like a species of reptile always eager to spew its venom. This scene and the analogous one in 25th Hour do have resemblances. Both are Brechtian interludes that interrupt the narrative for didactic as well as aesthetic purposes. But the likeness ends there. The race rant in Do the Right Thing, colorfully acted by familiar characters, is a comic scene geared to amuse the audience with its seemingly random string of rude, crude obscenities, rendered silly and harmless by standing outside the story of the film. The restroom scene in 25th Hour is a sharper, more dangerous affair. Monty is not outside the story. On the contrary, he is undergoing a psychological crisis when he enters the lavatory and thinks the darksome thoughts that we hear on the soundtrack and see illustrated by images materializing in the mirror before his eyes. Monty is not inveighing against abstract caricatures, moreover. His stream of consciousness tirade boils with overwhelming rage against the very real people, from Osama bin Laden and his terrorist ilk to nigger gangs, towelhead taxi drivers, and all of the others who populate a city that was filled not long ago with white immigrants like his father, like his friends, like himself. Seen from behind as his body slumps into a stooped posture reflecting his humiliation, Monty excoriates them all in the strongest imaginable terms before admitting that his guilt stems from his own actions and that his fate rests on his own shoulders. The proper curse, he realizes, is not fuck you, but fuck me. The scene is vastly more powerful than its quasi-counterpart in Do the Right Thing, owing to the excellence of its execution and to Lee's characteristic boldness in unmasking the prejudices embedded in American culture, in world history, and, one suspects the filmmaker is acknowledging, in himself. A good first step toward eradicating intolerance in America might be for people with established power to think a sincere and hearty "fuck us all." Another scene with extraordinary force occurs when Monty's friends Frank and Jake converse in Frank's apartment overlooking the starkly spotlighted Ground Zero site, which is relentlessly visible as the dialogue unfolds in a single bravura shot. Their unsparing discussion of Monty touches on everything from the great potential his life once held to the question of whether he'll kill himself rather than suffer in prison. In sum, they are gazing at a blasted, annihilated place and conducting a mournful post-mortem on a blasted, annihilated life. Eventually, the camera moves slowly toward the window, recalling the stunning single-take scene in Do the Right Thing when Sal talks with his son Pino before a window looking out on their Bed-Stuy street. In both cases, Lee is pointing to the inescapable links between individuals and the troubled environments in which their lives unfold. What took place at Ground Zero is, of course, immeasurably more horrific than anything that could happen to Monty or to any single person, if only because the pain and anguish were inflicted on such a large number of bodies and minds in such a concentrated period of time. The specter of Monty's incarceration is real and terrible all the same, and it's made even more frightening by what has hitherto been one of his best assets in life, the strong, healthy body and handsome, appealing face that are sure to get him promptly and repeatedly raped. Film critic David Edelstein states this film's importance in overly sweeping terms, writing that the whole story is fueled by the threat of anal rape. But that threat is obviously at the front of Monty's mind, driving his desperate demand for Frank to make him ugly the night before his sentence begins. Frank thinks Monty may commit suicide rather than face 7 years of such horror. And when Jake says they'll all renew their friendship when he returns to society, Frank rejects the possibility out of hand, doubting that Monty will survive the Otisville ordeal, even if he doesn't choose to take his own life. We never learn what does happen because 25th Hour concludes in a manner at once daringly open-ended and emotionally gratifying. James has insisted on driving Monty upstate, so Monty climbs into his father's car for the fateful journey. After driving north toward Otisville for a while, James unexpectedly says that he could just as easily turn west and keep on going, bringing Monty to some distant destination where he can start a new anonymous life. Dazed and exhausted after a sleepless night and the beating he forced Frank to give him, Monty dozes as his father's monologue spins on. The screen fills with James's fantasy, envisioning a utopia untainted by bygone errors and pregnant with the possibility that America holds out to free, unfettered spirits brave enough to grasp them. Historical missteps recede, races commingle in domestic harmony, and new generations build ways of living untarnished by the wrong decisions of their forebears. The film's final shot reveals the daydream's phantasmal nature, showing the car still heading north toward the prison. Spike Lee knows better than to embrace a sanguine view of a country that is scarred to this day by uncountable quantities of social, cultural, political, and all too human mistakes and misdeeds, going back to the time when avaricious, imperialistic, genocidal white men first set foot on the North American continent. Yet despite all this, and here is one of the foremost qualities that make Lee one of the most expansive, generous-minded artists of our time, he remains acutely aware of the spiritual and psychological riches that America incontestably should and someday may give to its residents as a birthright. 25th Hour is a quintessential expression of Lee's unique capacity for finding the political in the personal, the timeless in the quotidian, and worlds of potential splendor in the America shared by black folks, white folks, all folks. Thanks.